The story of Viking Deathstroke continues. The last issue of Allwinter we covered ended with Slade and Alec finding shelter amidst the ferocious Allwinter storm, only to be discovered by Killer Frost and Slade's daughter Rose, who would jam a giant stake through Slade's chest and leave him for dead by tossing him out of the window. In the beginning of this issue, however, we learn that Slade survived the staggering plummet, but not without sustaining serious injuries. He could barely breathe, barely walk, and was bleeding out all over the place, which eventually left him pinned down against a giant horde of undead Draugr. Before getting the chance to tear into him though, they were put to a stop by a man sporting a bulky suit of metal who seemingly appeared out of nowhere, blasting them with a fire gun. Knowing that his time on Earth would have been done for if this stranger hadn't helped him, Slade began thanking him. But soon enough, after the stranger took off his mask, Slade realized that it wasn't a stranger at all. It was actually his old friend Wintergreen. Now, for those of you who don't know, in the main universe, William Wintergreen acts as Slade's mentor and one of his closest friends, so it's cool to see their relationship translated to DC's medieval verse. But after going to Wintergreen's hideout for recovery, Slade woke up in a panic worrying about what had happened with Alec. So Wintergreen brought him some food to calm him down, and they started catching up on each other's lives because they hadn't seen each other in 15 years. So when Slade remarked that Addie was no longer with them, Wintergreen gave him his condolences and started reminiscing on when him and Addie used to work together. Soon enough, Slade asked where the hell they were because it was very impressive when it came to the architecture and how it was put together. So Wintergreen asked him if he was strong enough to walk so they could go on a tour of the place. After getting a good look at everything, Slade couldn't help but convey his frustrations and ignite an argument, expressing that Wintergreen promised to look after Rose when they departed 15 years ago, but clearly he didn't do a good job because now she was working for Vander Savage and she was the one who killed Adeline. Wintergreen didn't see eye to eye with him at all though, indicating that Slade neglected her all her life due to grieving his sons and that all she ever wanted was for him to be proud of her. Not taking kindly to this accusation at all, Slade then grabbed Wintergreen by his shirt, saying if you were any other man, I would gut you where you stand. But eventually he admitted that Wintergreen was telling the truth, it was just hard for him to face it. Moments later, he would notice an interesting looking book on one of Wintergreen's workstations, so he asked him what it was, and Wintergreen stated it was the story of how they ended up with the Allwinter, which Slade didn't really like because the Allwinter was actually him and Wintergreen's fault. You see, back when they were hired by Vander Savage to kill King Maxwell was fooling around with Mr. Freeze's wife Nora, and so on the day Slade and Wintergreen chose to assassinate him, Nora was accidentally caught in the crossfire, and upon seeing her dead, bloodied up body, Mr. Freeze was overwhelmed by such an immense amount of rage, he unleashed the full might of his power, which obviously resulted in the Allwinter. So that's why Slade wasn't a fan of this book. He was ashamed of what him and Wintergreen had done. But either way, Wintergreen, wanting to try and right their wrongs, suggested that they kill Mr. Freeze because when he died, the Allwinter would die with him. This of course sounded a lot easier than actually doing it, so Slade asked him how he planned on reaching Mr. Freeze in the first place because getting through the storm was no minor task. But confident he'd already figured that part out, Wintergreen indicated that digging would be their best bet. Instead of going through the storm, they'd go underneath it. For the last decade, he'd been building powerful machines capable of digging tunnels underground, and some of his rigs were already close to Gillingham. According to Slade, however, their only problem was manpower. He wasn't confident they'd be able to take down Mr. Freeze by themselves even if they did reach him, expressing they needed magic stronger than his. Which is when the story flips things over to Alec, Killer Frost, and Rose stuck inside of the tower they stabbed Slade in because the storm was too heavy for them to deliver Alec to Vander Savage. Nevertheless, eventually they were caught off guard when Wintergreen smashed his way inside through the ceiling. Once he grabbed Alec though, Killer Frost started blasting him with shards of ice and then slammed him with an ice wall. But realizing she wasn't aware of his presence yet, Deathstroke would then appear at the top of the tower, blasting her directly in the eye with a crossbow. After that, Rose was understandably pissed, but instead of going after her as well, Slade dropped his weapon and then dropped the book about the Allwinter's origin along with it. Moments later, Wintergreen would urge her to read it, and upon doing so, the hatred she had for her father increased even more than what it already was, stating that the Allwinter and fall of Gillingham was all his fault. With feelings of guilt, Slade responded, "Why do you think Adeline hated me, and why do you think I wanted you nowhere near me when you were growing up?" up, he was nothing but a villain. Now, Alec agreed with that statement. Slade was indeed a villain, but he believed some days even villains were given the chance to be heroes, and together they could end the cold and suffering for good. This sounded like an impossible task though, so Rose asked them how they would accomplish such a thing. Offering her his hand, Slade indicated they'd do it by doing what they do best, by killing a man. And eventually Rose would take his hand and agree to move forward with them, but she wanted Slade to know that she wasn't doing this for him. She was doing it for Wintergreen, the man who raised her. Unfortunately though, that's where this issue comes to an end, but if you want to see what happens next in the finale, let me know in the comments down below.